Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, everyone. If you could find a seat or a place that you can comfortably stand. We got a few more seats up here. So, welcome everyone. Wow, this is a gathering of some of Santa Fe's most interested and active folks. So just bear with me for 1 second while I take your picture. Nice, everybody smiled. My name's Signe Lindell. I'm City Councilor for District 1, and, oh, thanks. And I've had the pleasure of working with a group of folks from the city and Councilor Harris. Every Wednesday morning we meet and we work on this project. And I would like to also introduce Councilor Carol Romero-Worth, who's here with us today. Yay! I have the great pleasure to work with Carol, and I have the pleasure of working with all of you. And I know you're here today because you care greatly about this project. It is a generational opportunity for the city, and we're embracing this project with open arms. I don't know of any project that that's something. That's a bravo, absolutely. It is, I'm pretty sure. I'm willing to go record on that. Anyway, you're not here today to hear from me. I'm welcoming you, I'm thanking you, and I'm encouraging you to stay involved in this process, because this is not the end. We have a lot further to go with this, and we need your help. So it's my pleasure today to introduce to you a tall guy by the name of Matt Brown, who I get to work with in economic. I get shorter and he gets taller. Can you tell I like working with him? So Matt has driven a lot of this process for the city, and it's been innovative and it's been different, and I think it's been terrifically successful. And I personally am very grateful to him. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. All right. That's awesome. Thank you. I like the hugs. That's the best part. So you didn't come to listen to me either, so I'm going to try and be super quick and humorous for two people in the front row. Yeah, peanut color. So just to give you a little bit of context of how we've gotten here today. And I was thinking about it, and it turns out, even though the project formally was kicked off or initiated by a resolution passed in October, it actually goes back further than that. As many of you know, or were a part of, I'm going to pick this artificial date, but I'm going to go back to Remike and all the work that went on to envision the future of the St. Michael's corridor. Right? It's an immense amount of work. And then there was Culture Connects, led by Deborah, and trying to understand, right, what animates our culture and connects us and binds us together as a culture. And then just last year, there was a National Citizen Survey that went out to the entire community asking for the priorities, what was most important to you, what did you want to see in our city. And then we did a Bloomberg Challenge in the fall and did more research. And then this project kicked off. And in the beginning of it, in January and February, we had this collection phase, which culminated not just in the 2,200 surveys, but also almost 200 online community engagement activities that generated almost 1,000 different ideas for what could happen on this property. So when you take all of that research together, it generated some key priorities that we saw. Things like expanding and building the film and media industry, right? Expanding and having the very best higher education we've ever had in this city, but do it in a way that is connected to SFCC and IAIA and St. John's and the high schools, okay? The performing arts and having this be even more vibrant art and, and creativity center and hub for our community. And housing, workforce housing, right, that supports our middle class families and young people, 20 and 30-year-olds, which I wish there were more here in the room right now, like no offense, but maybe tomorrow we'll see a lot more of them down at Chavez Center. And innovation and entrepreneurship. Those were the big key top priorities. And what we will do over the next 3 days, we're having 3 different in-person sessions, and then also online, the community is going to be able to come and give feedback online. And we will take all of that, and we'll synthesize that down into a set of guidelines, key priorities that then can be adopted by the mayor, by city council, and by city staff to guide our work going forward on what happens and actually gets developed and grows and blossoms here on this site. So with that, we are now in the present, and I'm going to hand you over to Valerie, who will take us to the next step.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad you're here, and I just want to repeat what Matt said about how important it is for your input today. And so we're really grateful for your participation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am, but just want to welcome you and welcome you in both languages. Estamos muy contentos por su presencia y muy agradecidos por su participación en este proyecto colaborativo, tanto para honrar el pasado del campus Midtown y para reimaginar este espacio como algo que va a servirles a ustedes y todos los miembros de la comunidad diversa de Santa Fe por generación. So, as you know, this land has had many incarnations before today. So it's native land, settled land, World War II Army Hospital Barracks, College of Santa Fe, Greer Garson Studios, The Screen, Greer Garson Theater, Santa Fe Art Institute, and Santa Fe University of Art and Design. And I just like to, and IAIA, thank you. So we just want to I'd like to ask us to carry us into this process with a memory of the history of this land, the long history, and leading to our presence on it. Very important. I am with a project called Common Ground. Common Ground is a community-based project which works to improve the way that municipal agencies interact with their neighborhoods. We have a longer-term project in Albuquerque, and then we're assisting with this project in Santa Fe. And Common Ground is really working to improve the voices that influence how our land develops in this city. And so we came into this project a little bit later, but are happy to facilitate these sessions. And so I'm here with a team of very wonderful facilitators, very talented facilitators. Miguel Acosta, who's right there. You can raise your hand. Jamie Figueroa, Elizabeth Gutierrez, and Hilda Perez. And so it's our job today to take your input, encourage your input, and encourage you to participate in several different ways. So Matt talked a little bit about the stages before that. So there, in the months before today, there have been a lot of different ways for people to participate. Based on all of that, 5 design teams have created conceptual visions for the future of the site. And I really want to emphasize that phrase, conceptual visions. While the concepts are based on community preferences, they are suggestive and fluid. Nothing is set in stone here. These are ideas. And every bit of input that you give today is going to influence what happens with the site or the design for the site after this. They're not master plans or detailed set designs. Every comment and vote you make today will be used to create a set of written guidelines for adoption by the City Council and the Mayor. These guidelines will guide how the city government makes decisions about and takes the next steps in the development of the site. So as you move through, I'm going to talk about how we're going to move through these designs after the presentation. Try to keep that in mind so that you're really not thinking of choosing any 5 of these. That's not how this is going to work today. It may be an amalgamation of all of them, it may not, but they are just sort of options. So we're still learning, and your input is invaluable for that reason. So this is how it's going to work. So as you're sitting here, the 5 design teams are going to give presentations at 10 minutes each. My job is to keep them at 10 minutes each, so design teams, I'm going to make a sound, or my phone's going to make a sound, so that we can proceed through that pretty efficiently. Then after all 5 presentations, we're going to leave our chairs, and the staff's going to get rid of them. And then based on the color of your name tag, and I'll guide you through that later, you're going to gather in smaller groups at each of the posters where you can have a small group discussion and where everybody can be heard. As a facilitation team, that's really our job, is to make sure that you have a really productive discussion at each poster and that every voice can be heard. So I just remind you now, when you're in your small group discussion, I'm a talker, so I say this to myself. So if you notice that you're talking a lot in your group and the others in your group are talking less, just sort of stop yourself and say to your partner, what do you have to say, or what would you like to add? Very, very important in our groups, and we're going to help you with that. Again, I say that because I'm a talker, so I would be the one that you'd be saying, I think you've spoken enough. So again, one facilitator will be positioned at each poster, and you'll gather around them in small groups of, I think it's going to be about 20. You're going to have 20 minutes at each poster, and you'll hear the sound of my gong that will have you move to the next poster after 20 minutes, so you'll rotate through all 5. Design team will be there, so you can ask the questions that the facilitators can't answer. The design teams will be able to answer there at the posters. And then we're going to give you dots. We're going to give you green dots, and we're going to give you red dots. And the green dots are for you to put on the posters themselves for things that you like. And the red dots, it's obvious, right? And you all get 1 star. And that star we ask you to put, if you're willing, on the one that you like, the vision that overall you seem to like the best. Again, this is not a vote. That doesn't mean we're going to take a vote and pick one. It just tells us which overall design you like better. So green dots, red dots, and 1 star, and you'll be getting those at the stations. There also are Post-it notes, and so we encourage you with the Post-it notes at each poster to write longer comments or phrases or words, whatever you like, and stick those on the wall. So those won't be directly on the design. Your dots and your star will be, but your Post-it notes will go on the wall next to the design or on the table there. And we encourage you to write as many of those as you like, just be concise, because that's helpful. And you can't write on the back, I think. You could, but it's sticky, so anyway. Yeah. And then I just want to, as people came in, we tried to make sure that we asked if people would rather speak in, if you'd like a group in Espanol. Is there anybody who needs that? Okay, we're equipped for that. So if that happens, or and you want to go to where Miguel is or Hilda, that's and they can do that or facilitate that. Okay. So we're not going to have any Q&A during the presentations. All of that will happen at the posters during the discussion, so we can proceed through the presentations quickly. So let's get started with the presentations, and then again, we'll all move. The chairs will move. While they're moving the chairs, you can have some refreshments. We'll try to do that in 5 minutes. And we will see you at the posters. And again, thank you, and please give us all the input you have for us. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm representing Surrounding Studios. We're a landscape architecture and planning group here in Santa Fe. We are Surrounding Studios. We're a landscape architecture and land planning firm here in Santa Fe. Our idea was to consider putting things that we often think about at the end, at the beginning, which is our infrastructure and how we build. and we're proposing this idea of using sustainable infrastructure to be a main designer. Let me try again. So what we're asking to do is to think about how infrastructure, the last thing we usually think about, but which is the first thing in development, as a driver for how this site might work. We are advancing the idea of what's called an eco-district. It's actually an international and national movement that's going, that's asking communities, would they like to plan for the future, about how we will live in the future, how we will be sustainable. And it asks to look at a lot of different modalities, but the main thing is to make sure that a development's profitable, because if it isn't, it's not going to work. And but that it prioritizes the people and planet first. So in the community visioning survey that was done earlier, 4 items came up that were discussed before about industries that we'd like to attract to this site. And so what can infrastructure do to attract those kind of firms? So think about Amazon. They just put out this huge effort that everybody in the world is jumping through hoops to get. And it is got a checklist of things that they want that are really about sustainable communities. And so what we said is, what if we try to apply that to this district? One of the wonderful things is in the Midtown link that was approved in 2016. The city has already set it up so that the bottom here, which is the existing circumstance, could eventually, over many years, go to a much denser, much more urban environment, which is really helpful. In that, as a team, said, what if we take 3 big ideas and see how they could be done as infrastructure? And the 3 things we looked at is connections, water, and energy. So what could that look like? We're not going to go through all the little details, but with a eco-district strategy, it is really a framework. It doesn't tell you what to do. It says have this conversation with your community. When we look at connections, what should it do for the planet? What should it do for people? What should it do for profit? So the first initiative we thought is try to use what's there. Anything we can use that's there already actually saves a lot of money. You don't have to rebuild it. And it's lots cheaper to rebuild it than doing it new. So in this connection, what we said is right now we have almost nobody really coming using transit or bike. Let's build toward a future that is much more diverse with transit, with people on bikes, walking, and maybe cars still. But moving towards shared car strategies, looking for places to put solar panels that you could put electric cars under, looking for connections to the community that would allow a bus to come through here, exit out here, come through here, exit back out. It comes from the tap water. And so the future is to think about, could we recycle water as a whole system, and about taking what falls on the ground, on the roads, and the rear, on the plat, and moving them to water landscapes, which right now, on your own home in most places, and even in this city, 50% of your potable water goes to landscape. And the other component being to look at, could we actually take black water that we produce out of these and recycle it back into places that is appropriate to use them. So the target would be that, again, in the future, we may use that the target is we don't use any more water than this site uses right now, but we expand the capacity for more people to live there by being smarter about the way we treat our water. And the last one was taking care of the most easy thing for us to do. We live in a place with 350 days of sun. So what if we actually created a utility district, and it's an evolving discussion, but actually created a district where we own as a city, the PV panels in the site. If you put them on every building up there, we had a solar company do a calculation. It could generate over 21 million kilowatt hours annually. That's over a $200,000 savings. The reason for that, the reason Facebook is doing that with their site, is because it gives them capacity to control their electricity, avoid disruptions. Like one of the few electrical systems that survived Irma in the Dominican Republic was actually the solar systems. Everything else went down, but the places that had solar systems actually continue to work. And so what's really interesting for us is we think what's most important is actually thinking through this infrastructure, the stuff that's hidden under the ground. But actually, if we own the ways that they cable up together, we can actually migrate so that in the future, when technology changes, when our uses changes, when the way we distribute things change, we have the easy conduits to make those changes as quickly as we can. And to survive the future, we think that's important. So we also came up with a plan, and in our more concrete suggestions, we can sit down and look at them in the 20 minutes more. But it is, again, you'll see the shapes of many things that you already know, and like the dorm buildings. The idea being, look first, can you reuse them? Again, just the embodied energy of what's in those buildings is huge. And by maintaining this oval that we have, the cross-section through there, we use and utilize the systems that are in there to build toward that future. And you know, whether it all stays to the things we dream about today, we think it's important that if the infrastructure's there, it can change for what our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children's children want, not to be so fixated on what we are today. So last, we often are scared. We have been leaders in Santa Fe of national thought about sustainability. This really is a movement to think about what is our future sustainability? Where do we model this? This is what place we think. These are some examples of places. There's a lot of them. Many of them are smaller than this site, and they're all different. They all responded to their communities, so those are examples we'll look for. But it is part of a process. It is actually to do some things about commitment. It is to have further conversations about what are those criteria that you care about people, places, and planet. And then one of the things that I'd love to just note is this is actually Sawmill District in Albuquerque. I don't know if any of you know that area. If you haven't been there, go. It is an evolving mixed-use district, and those of you who are scared about what does that mean, it's a wonderful place. It has people living on the top and working and operating businesses of all scales below. They have taverns in there, they have all kinds of things, but please consider that. And I think it's a wonderful future. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and we hope that you'll think of the underground as much as above ground.
Okay, thank you all very much for coming out for this. This has been very exciting for our team. We are the Spears Horn team. This is Kate Bowles. This is Monica Montoya with Montoya Land Use Consulting, who's been a consultant with us for this project, which has been a lot of fun. So we need our slides. All right. Turn off these lights, that would be a little beneficial. That's okay. Is that better? Okay. Okay, so we were asked to condense our proposal, our vision, into 5 key elements. So I'm going to tell you what those are and then go into more detail. The first one is maximum connection. This is 64 acres in nearly the center of Santa Fe. We want to connect it to all the surrounding land, both for pedestrians, vehicles, and really tie this in to the surrounding land. The second is low building heights, but dense urban form. This is very important. Part of it has to do with recognizing the DNA of Santa Fe, which is a city that goes back for 400 years. It's world-renowned. We think this new area, even though it's going to be innovative and exciting, it needs to have identity as part of Santa Fe, not like something you might see anyplace else in the country. The third, we are proposing contemporary architecture for all of the new construction. We think that will be a real identity for this new area, very exciting and forward-thinking. The fourth key element is, like surroundings, we propose to retain all of the existing buildings, at least for the short term, and I think there's some important reasons for that. And then the fifth is to rely heavily on on-street parking, and there are a lot of reasons for that that I'll go into. So here is our drawing showing this site, approximately 64 acres, in the surrounding area. And this drawing really emphasizes what we're promoting for connectivity. A lot of new roads connecting to all four of the major surrounding streets, so that we're really knitting this land into the urban fabric all around. I think that's very important for the vitality of this area, and also to boost the vitality of the surrounding districts. This is zooming in more on the urban design for the 64 acres. And we're looking at a very fine-grained urban texture, pretty fine network of streets like you see downtown. These would be narrow streets with on-street parking, and a pretty dense infill of buildings, but nothing higher than Vigas here. We're looking for really a wide variety of colors, materials, really exciting forms, but still recognizing in a sense, the Spanish colonial land form, urban form of buildings to the street, portals, roof decks, zaguans, courtyards, balconies. So to talk about saving all of the existing buildings, this drawing shows them. Some are very important, like the building we're in, Greer Garrison, Fulgerson Library, others not so much. But in the short term, saving all those and using the more marginal ones for workspaces, studios, work-live, even storage, will save the city money. It will provide a wider range of economic opportunity, a more diverse activity on the site. And it will also provide sort of a land bank for future growth. So we think for the vitality of this area, for the short term, retain all the buildings and infill and use them, we'll get a much more interesting urban fabric. So just to look at the infill buildings, I don't know how well you can see these, but we're looking at a mix of 1, 2, and 3 stories. The yellow here is 1 story, the orange 2 story, and the deeper orange 3 story. We want to see a fine grain urban texture, sort of like we have downtown. So this is actually a pretty dense, we calculate we are getting 2.7 million square feet of building space with this scheme. Less than 1/5 of that is existing buildings. So this is a pretty dense infill, and yet we have a lot of green space and variety, and keeping the heights, mainly 2-story buildings and less, but some 3-story. Just some sections showing how these stories could be configured. There can be a lot of variety with this. Down in the bottom, you probably can't read this, but it's showing the square footages for the old buildings and then what we're proposing for the new. And we're placing a big emphasis on green space. With the infill buildings we calculate we can harvest, I think it is 6.2 million gallons of rainwater per year off the roofs of the new buildings to support the landscaping that we're proposing. And it's all usable pedestrian space. It's courtyards, walkways, gardens, some street trees. But a very porous site with a lot of pedestrian connections throughout and to the surrounding areas. And we feel very strongly about the pedestrian connections. This is the whole city and main pedestrian corridors, and you see our site and the Midtown link is critical for all this. So we see this site as a real node for pedestrian connections, bike connections, and of course public transit as well. Parking. We are big fans of on-street parking because it's convenient, people like it, it separates the sidewalk from moving traffic, so it's safer for pedestrians, it tames traffic to move more slowly. And by doing on-street parking where we can get approximately 2/3 of all the parking that's going to be needed with this infill on-street, on-site, with about only 1/3 in parking lots, which would be small and well-screened and landscaped, so they would not be disturbing to the urban fabric. So we're showing, I think it's over 2,000 parking places in this scheme. In terms of the parking, that leads into uses that we see for the site. We think the infill should be about half residential and half non-residential. These uses can fully share parking, and we see this parking, by the way, as free, which will be novel for the city. So this drawing shows potential uses, and in this scheme, the uses are more or less grouped into nodes. The blue is mixed use, probably primarily residential, but then there's a film production in this area, higher education here, community uses there. This is one scheme to sort of create districts within the 64 acres. Another possibility would be to scramble these uses and have it sort of open campus, which I think is also a really exciting idea. Okay, the final slide. The final slide is an overlay of the buildings in downtown Santa Fe with the buildings that exist in this area. There's sort of a common scale and actually a common area. And we're looking on this site for the vitality that exists downtown, that fine-grained, wonderful pedestrian connection, a lot of mixed use. Although this site, of course, being primarily contemporary architecture, would have a distinct and different look, and yet it would relate to the history and the character of Santa Fe. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Gotcha. All right. Wow, what an amazing turnout today. This is quite spectacular, and we're really thrilled to be part of this effort. My name is Alexander Dezurek. I'm with Autotrope Design. We're based here in Santa Fe. I want to give a quick shout out to the really talented design team that we have in-house. Representing us here are also Brooke Ballou and Sophia Saida. They're two integral members on the team. But we also convened an excellent advisor team, people that are experts in entrepreneurialism, startups in technology, creative arts, as well as media and entertainment, and especially innovation parks. So I'm going to give another shout out to David Breaker here, who is on our advisory team in that capacity. So when we sat down and started thinking about this project and met with our advisor team to go over what we wanted to do here, We really focus in on the idea of creating a true innovation district in Santa Fe. An innovation district is an area where different people, organizations, and institutions work together, sometimes collaborate, sometimes work on their own. But in a place where all these different ideas and organizations could work together in the same area and see what kind of synergies can come out of that. And thinking about what's appropriate for Santa Fe, we focus in on 4 main sectors. One is a civic. The city owns this property. We believe the city should have a presence there. Film and emerging media arts, we know, are very successful in driving the economy in New Mexico, and we would like to encourage and promote that. We feel that education, integrating education into this plan, is also very important, and especially having another anchor institution, higher education institution, anchoring this site, we feel is critical. Ideally, this would be an institution that focuses on arts and creativity, perhaps something along the lines of like the Stanford Design School is a name that's been kicked about. Also, we believe that bringing in commercial innovation partners will be the last key to this. Now, that can mean a lot of different things, but primarily we're looking at businesses that have a similar type of makeup as frankly, our advisor team, so it's a little biased, but we think that this is really appropriate for Santa Fe. People that are looking and cutting the forefront in technology and the arts and in media. And that's the 4 main pillars of this innovation district. We also see a great opportunity, which you cannot see super well, of implementing the Midtown Link project, Midtown Link guidelines rather, with this project. So you can't see it too well, but the emphasis of the Midtown Link was to take the big box strip malls that are on St. Mike's and Cerrillos, redevelop them into being 3 or 4-story apartments over ground floor retail, repurposing the big boxes to create a pedestrian-friendly environment on Cerrillos and St. Mike's. And so those are the things that were our inspiration as we dove into the design. Of course, the context of where Midtown is important. Everyone knows about downtown. Now people are starting to learn about Rufina. But it's along the primary corridor of Cerrillos and St. Mike's. And right now, at least on this campus, it's somewhat of a missing tooth in the smile of Santa Fe. When we looked at this, though, we decided to go big and bold, all right? We said that, yes, the city owns the university campus, but when you look at this aerial view, you see some really great neighborhoods ringing the campus. You see some great assets like Santa Fe Public Schools, like Santa Fe High, rather. But you have a lot of wasted and misused space, not only in the campus, but all around here. You have like dumping grounds for the Forest Service, for Santa Fe Public Schools or motor pool, facilities like that. Is that really appropriate for a high-profile site here in the middle of Santa Fe? We don't think that's the highest and best use for this property. So we propose to take the super block formed here and actually do a master plan for that, okay? Now, when you look at it, this is a little bit of a headache to look at, but the property ownership is challenging, to say the least. And to do this project in the way that we're proposing would be challenging. It would take political leadership, and I'm glad to see we have some city councilors here looking at this. But you've got vested stakeholders in the state that has a great state office complex and archives here. Santa Fe Public Schools has property, where is it, here, here, here. The city has property here and here, and even the federal government has a little inholding right in here, combined with commercial property owners. So while what we're proposing is by no means easy, I think that with a relatively few number of current landholders, including those that are public entities, and that might be willing to work together for the public good and to do something better here for all involved, we feel that this is a good idea. So in looking at the site, we said, all right, what are the buildings on site that we want to keep? Well, of course, this building, the Visual Arts Center, the Greer Garson Theater, the Greer Garson Studios, some of the great facilities here absolutely need to stay. And then we looked at the other uses around here, and yes, we're kind of taking out the motor pool for Santa Fe Public Schools. But we've got Nava Elementary School, we've got the new Milagro Middle School going up here, we've got great state office buildings. These are all great resources that could be leveraged in our design. Now we add in the street grid and building footprints. And then you start to layer on some green space, and you start to see some opportunities here. Connections. Maybe we do a gateway feature off of St. Mike's that leads into the heart of the campus. Connects to Linear Park that goes down to Franklin Miles Park. That connects into the neighborhoods beyond, so it's a way of pulling the surrounding neighborhoods into our development. We finished the road that goes all the way through campus so that you've got a connection from Cerrillos all the way through to Siringo, and then you use that to organize a street grid. by utilizing some of the existing roads, like the loop road on campus, as well as adding in a few small segments of new roads, all of a sudden now you've got a logical street grid that makes sense for organizing how we lay this development out. Similar to what Faith was talking about, we proposed putting in a microgrid. If we're going to be doing road work and utility work here anyway, let's put in the infrastructure for 21st century microgrid and infrastructure. That includes a fiber optic loop that would run through here, connecting to all the major portions of the site. And it includes a microgrid that has photovoltaic panels on all the roofs, a microgrid control center with battery backup, so that this development, this innovation district, in the event of an emergency, can keep the power on and can keep going. And then in the regular operation, feed electricity back into the grid. Now this is where we get really excited though, and that's really seeing the synergies that could happen. So this is really just one, and this is the path from early childhood development to career. So Santa Feans, like my daughter who's going to start at the pre-K program at Nava in the fall, could go to school there, go to Milagro, go to Santa Fe High, and then maybe go to that higher education institution on campus. From there, they could spin off and get jobs in the Civic Center, in an innovation partner, in the film industry, or even in state and local government. Everything that you need could be right here in this one district. And when we start to think about this, some of the exciting things about this kind of a development, this kind of synergy that can happen, we kind of step back and say, this kind of looks a little bit like a circuit board here. And just like electrons run through a circuit board controlling information in a computer, we could have thoughts and ideas and people moving through this innovation district. And the exciting things happen in the intersection of some of these paths, where new ideas, new meetings, chance encounters take place and spin off into new ideas, business ventures, and solutions for the challenges that face the world. A lot hard to see this site plan here, but going through this site plan, again, we talked about the street grid network, we've talked about the park. We see the higher education institution anchoring the center of the site, utilizing most of the buildings that are on the campus that we decided to preserve right here. We see a place for the city of Santa Fe to have residents on campus to administer Volgeson Library. That'll be a new public library for the heart of Midtown, and the Greer Garson Theater. We see repurposed big boxes and new innovation partner buildings built in sites, so there's people mixing and working through the site in that synergistic pattern I just talked about. Expanding the Greer Garson Studios to be film centers. And at the heart of this, we've got a plaza, okay? And each of the 4 sectors are represented in that plaza, and I'll show you an image of what that may look like in a second. And then ringing the perimeter are exactly what Link is calling for. It's 4-story buildings, ground floor retail, residences above. We did a real quick count. We can get about 700 apartment units just in this, with that configuration. So in terms of housing, we're providing that as well. Now, looking at the massing of the site, this is the same kind of color program diagram. One thing that we felt was very important is that while we have high massing along Cerrillos and St. Mike's, and kind of mixture of massing in 2, 3, and 4-story buildings in the middle campus, we want to set that down when we get to the edge. Where Nava Elementary School is in the adjacent neighborhoods, we're proposing single-family housing, workforce housing as a way to gradiate that massing up into the site. Here's an aerial view looking from St. Michael's here, looking at that gateway feature down the linear park. Now with some colors on there, so don't worry, we're not proposing like pink and orange stucco, but there'll be maybe more earth tones. And here's an idea of what that gateway district might be. So these are those mixed-use buildings. We're proposing a traffic circle. By no means is the only way to get that done, but we feel that some way of marking this site from St. Mike is important because that's something that this campus really lacks right now. Here's an idea of what that central plaza may look like. So maybe kind of a contemporary riff on traditional Pueblo massing, but in a very modern way. But really creating a public forum. Oh yeah, we kept the band shell, by the way. It's exactly where it is. But creating a public forum at the middle of this complex. There's the Arts Park. I've got 2 more slides. Here's the Arts Park looking from one of the sky bridges down. These would be the innovation partner buildings. Yeah, we kind of ripped off some Starchitect stuff here, but the idea that you would have maybe contemporary buildings lining that, and then feature artwork set amongst native vegetation in that park connecting to Franklin Miles Park. And then lastly, the idea of repurposing and reutilizing the great buildings on site, but then integrating them into a street grid that really makes a lot of sense. So a little hard to see, but here's Greer Garson Theater. Here's that new street that connects Siringo to Cerrillos. There's our plaza down there. We propose taking the administration building and putting it into a police substation. So it gives you an idea of what one of the internal streetscapes might look like. Okay? And with that, I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Thank you. Whoa. How cool is this? It's so rare that architects get to see each other present. So we're getting a lot of ideas to steal from each other, which is great. So I'm Sean Evans, principal of AOS Architects. We're up there, right there, that's where we are. And I'm representing a really phenomenal team of Santa Feans and fans of Santa Fe. Design office also from Santa Fe, Rothko from Nashville, and Mass Design from Boston. All of us are honored to be a part of this brainstorming for the future of the city we love. The revisioning of the campus presents an historic opportunity to heal the wounds of decades of short-sighted planning that resulted in an isolated and fortified campus, unknown to most residents and visitors to the city. The campus is located in the geographic and demographic center of the city. However, it's a large void surrounded by an array of few streets that do not connect to the surrounding communities. The campus inhibits walkability, commerce, education, and civic goals. The public process as part of this, public discourse as part of this process thus far has clarified the desired program, which we think can be easily accommodated, but much like our peers, we think that's actually the wrong question to start with. And what's most important is to focus on connectivity. Our vision aims to thread many new conduits of both physical connectivity and mental collaboration between the campus and the community. No longer will college students hide behind walls and suburban strip malls. The academic facilities and interconnected tech hub facilities will transition students into the workforce through a shared creative entrepreneurial spirit. Alexi went through the ownership map, so I get to skip it. So here we see the lack of current connectivity, only 2 ways in and only 2 ways out. No connections to Cerrillos, no connections to Casa Alegre, poor connections to St. Mike's and Hopewell, no connection to Bellama and Franklin Miles. What a lost opportunity. What if we charted not just 1 or 2 additional connections, but a dozen? How might we capitalize on the new link zoning overlay while not focusing on capitalism, but equity? How might the single use of an academic campus be broadened to create a vibrant new Midtown? So if we focus just on the current campus, we see new academic buildings in blue, expanded facilities for the library and Garson Theater, expanded facilities for the Garson Studios in purple, new entrepreneurial tech buildings in orange, a ribbon of new affordable housing in yellow. We think that's about 200 units right there, with a clarified central green bounded by a large new iconic building at the south and a cafe bandshell in the middle. But link zoning enables us to rethink Cerrillos, extending and widening a central park, creating a visual connection from campus to Santa Fe's main street. Large mixed-use buildings with retail on the ground floor, housing on 3 floors above, and internal parking garages will bring much-needed walkable streets to Midtown. So many of our favorite destinations are already here: Jumbo, India House, Tecolote, Annapurna's, Robin Charlie's, Felipe's, Dion's. My kids are really excited about the Chick-fil-A. Shouldn't we be able to walk here? Shouldn't we be able to ride our bikes? Now, we broke the rules because we think that the link should be extended to the other side of Cerrillos, because that's really what is needed to slow traffic down and create a truly walkable district and connect to Casa Alegre. Now, this style of development has long been envisioned for St. Mike's, but we believe that the most important element here is the rerouting of Hopewell Street straight into the campus and through to Franklin Miles. We're suggesting the elimination of the current entrance and straddling that with 2 new entrances, creating a big new park for residents, contrasted with this park here, which is really for the citizens of Santa Fe. This park here is for the immediate neighborhood. In the block south of St. Mike's, we see great opportunity for different types of housing, traditional apartments, live-work housing, as well as the mixed-use housing we've talked about. And to the west, the tech hub expands into the underutilized government land with commercial loft buildings interspersed with additional live-work housing. You can see how the new street grid now threads through the pedestrian and vehicular traffic into Franklin Miles, into the neighborhoods to the west. Along Serengo, we're proposing a couple new roads, but we'd really like to preserve what's one of the last large pieces of the natural landscape in our city. So, in keeping with the themes drawn from public discourse thus far, we have a new city center, expanded higher education facilities, Center for the Arts, a Center for Entrepreneurship, Center for Film and Emerging Media, and a vibrant residential and commercial corridor. So here's looking southwest from Hopewell and Cerrillos with the Sandias in the background. This will all be on the board. You can read that much later. And let's look at some images of what we think the character of this place might be. So there's not a lot of this type of housing done in the Santa Fe style, and we don't know that that's appropriate anyways. But it is important to note that the link overlay does relax the very strict design controls that are typical for Santa Fe. Garson Park, again, neighborhood park, smaller green spaces, more intimate, separated by clusters of trees. The campus quad, we're proposing to retain many of the existing dormitories and really make that into a prime people in Santa Fe. This is something we've been talking a lot about, something that the new mayor is talking about. Our children need to be able to see and understand our heritage, but they also need to be able to envision the future. And design and architecture is a major part of that. These buildings should be net zero energy, and their design needs to visibly demonstrate our commitment to the environment. We're no longer going to hide solar panels. We're no longer going to hide rainwater catchment. It's going to drive our design from here out. The Central Park, we're looking at a series of, we're calling it Santa Fe Green. We're looking at a series of linear parks. There's a really fabulous new one in Dallas called Clyde Warren Park. We won't talk about where the money comes from to fund that. But a big space capable of housing, as many people as will see Zozobra, full of activities. And at the center of it all, an icon. Is it traditional? Is it modern? Does it matter? It needs to be tall. It needs to be seen, and it needs to be a place from which people can see and position the very new center of Santa Fe. So here's a view of our beloved strip malls and what it could be with this great new civic park and a variety of open spaces, and really mix the density of buildings that we've heard many of our peers talking about. Let's do that, but let's also do big, bold, urban public spaces for all of us to enjoy. Thank you very much.
We just changed everything, so hold on. Hi, everybody. My name is Christy Green, and this is Michelle Negretti, and this is Astacia Huddleston, and we're part of the team, one of the 5 teams. Michelle is with Strata Design, and Astacia is with Anima, and I'm with Radical here in Santa Fe. And I must say we're quite honored and privileged to be here among you all and among the teams. And thank you so much for being here in the middle of the day, especially. Let's see. There's so much that's been said as part of what we're proposing as well, which is good. There's good compliment. Do I have to point this anywhere, or just push it? Okay. Instant gratification. So what we're proposing is the organizing and inspirational principle of watershed. And we mean the watershed in terms of ecological and cultural watershed. As you all know, the watershed is the point at which water originates in the mountains and where it flows in the streams and rivers. It's also how it flows through our pipes and through our own bodies. It's how water goes up into the air and down into the ground. Culturally speaking, it's a dividing point. It's something that happens that after which nothing is ever the same. So for example, you know, the Great Depression or World War II or electing Obama. So you may think it's obvious that this is what we've chosen. I just wanted to give you a moment to read a few facts about water, which I'm sure some of you already know. I'm just going to let you read these. Can you see them, or shall I read? Well, I was thinking we should make one that says, "Stop treating your water like shit." Flushing it down the toilet. So this is an invitation to express gratitude, and that's how we would like to start and continue. So our principles within our watershed theme are phased, progressive, and fluid. They don't start and stop clearly or in a linear fashion. They are circular and circulatory. They are infiltrate, meander, and replenish. And with each of these, there is a time frame. We're imagining infiltrate being 1 to 2 years, meandering being the 3rd and 4th year, and replenish being 5 years and beyond. So it's iterative, and it's not a start-stop. It's hopefully one phase building on the next. And within the phases, we are offering the organizing programs, the basic programs and principles that we'd like to activate on the space, and they are learn, live, play, create, and work. Each one of these is tied to water directly. We understand that water is work, water is living, water is play, water is creating, and that everything that we propose ties back to water as whether we decide if it's beneficial or not. If it's good for water, it's good for life, it's good for the economy and the ecology. So basically water is the ecological and the cultural and the economic currency that we're operating with. Yeah. So we don't have many maps that show massing studies or buildings. Basically what we're talking about is more a systemic approach in terms of how people live here, how people work here, how people play here. We do have maps on our boards that show where those activities take place. But for example, we're thinking that there would be multiple educational entities based on the campus, not just one four-year higher education institution, that we would have multiple types of housing options. There would be live-work, temporary or transitional housing, multiple family housing, and that's a big driver of the place and participation in place. And that we would have multiple forms of business startups, including existing businesses that might have satellite offices here as well. All green industry related transformation on the site, including effluent water, rainwater, and soil building, solar and energy efficiency would all be used as curriculum development. So if we're assessing what happens in a building, whether it's does the building get a solar panel or a gray water system, those all become activators of education and then employment. Yeah? You guys still with me? So like I said, the first phase is infiltrate, and this is where we propose to assess and plan. So we would look at what is the capacity of the existing buildings. We're not going to go in and take things out. It's what's the capacity for gray water, rainwater, solar. What's the capacity for teaching in this place? What's the capacity for activating what already is? In a lot of the vacant and underutilized sites, rather than having those, I don't know if anybody noticed when you drove in today, like you could hardly see because there was soil blowing everywhere. Those we're imagining as placeholders of life, so creating living sponges with the soil. So all of those would be graded slightly with landform grading techniques, and they would be seeded with a dense cover crop, so that what we're doing is creating life in a place before we start to build. So every action has at least 3 corresponding stacked functions of benefit. The other thing I forgot to say is everything at first and hopefully throughout is mostly low-tech, light touch, and then we can reflect on what we do as interventions and then go back and do more and more sort of permanently as we go along after we learn from phase 1 and 2. This is just an image of what we're calling the reservoir, and the reservoir is what is now the main sort of promenade coming into the campus. And that we're thinking as the first phase of infiltration, where we would have lots of types of pop-ups, pop-up businesses, pop-up medical clinic, food trucks, again, where we could do demonstrations of whatever green industry type interventions we've done, like maybe breaking up some pavement or harvesting water through curb cuts. Also where we would invite any type of artistic intervention that has to do with water, or a way to explain and celebrate artistically what we're doing in terms of the green industry design. And these are just some images of what I just talked about. There's a concrete that was pulled up and made into a cover crop. There's a landform grading, which is passive water harvesting on contour. Working with local participants and residents to actually do the work and learn how to do the work, so this can be replicated beyond the campus boundaries. And then what does it feel like? It feels like lots of things happening in little simple spaces, great activities, interaction, fun, learning, hopefully not too heavily programmed that there's a right or wrong, but there's an invitation to play and participate.
Okay, we're going to switch a little bit. So the next phase would be meander, and that would be years 3 and 4. And so this is, taking that first initial quick, try and get the campus activated, used, and transition from being a private institution to an asset where the community feels welcome, to a place where people want to stay a little longer, maybe start to make this place their home, their place of business. So in this phase, we're expanding the idea of using gray water and rainwater in the buildings. We're introducing permeable paving in parking areas. We're trying to create more housing opportunities on site. This would be a phase where we would use new build, whereas in the previous phase, we would be adaptive reuse of the dormitories. We're trying to get more people on the campus all the time. We see this as a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week home in the heart of the campus. We'll see continued opportunities to train and educate people, bringing in the local schools that are adjacent, bringing in nonprofits, really building those partnerships that were part of the initial phase, and using the business incubators and other startup facilitation spaces on site to start to grow live-work opportunities so people can live and work in the same environment. So we're really trying to create a diverse environment where many people can live. If you're young, you're old, you're working, you're playing, all in one space. Oh, right, thank you. And then in this phase too, we're really trying to reach out across the campus into the surrounding areas. So we're looking at, really piercing through to Cerrillos, really piercing through to St. Michael's, and taking the already adjacent trail systems and bringing them through the campus. So like some of the other previous projects, we want to see more connectivity, but we really want to kind of control the vehicular access to the campus. We want cars to move through, but we want them to be secondary to other modes of transportation.
I think we're almost out of time. But basically the third phase, the replenish phase, is the one that happens in the 5th year and beyond, in which, during which time we would do stewardship and demonstrations to document what has been done over time, how we penetrate the boundary of the campus and extend beyond to the neighboring parks, schools, residential areas. And again, the stacked functions of living affordably and regeneratively, with also different types of growing of symbiotic businesses. So we're talking about tech, film, art, green industry, all being housed here and demonstrated here. Like Sean was saying, having it be explicit and celebrated rather than hidden. The solar, the rainwater, the film, everything that's happening is an opportunity for learning and for business. And this is up kind of by the dorms, again, reusing existing buildings, creating a focal hub for residents, for productive landscapes, and for celebrating the harvesting and reuse of water. Okay, we're finished? Okay. And then the map that we have, you can just come talk to us on the boards about specifically where everything we've talked about would actually go. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a reminder, we've got to move all the chairs out of this room. So if you would take care of your neighbor as you stand up and move to the refreshment area of the hallway. Take care of your neighbors, please, as you do that. If you're so inclined to help with the chairs, we'll do that. One more thing, I need your attention for one more thing to divide you into your groups. So if you have a red name tag with red on it, you're going to start with the designs here.